Hey guys, welcome to the Fatherhood on the Field podcast. I am your host, Luke Sawyer, and I am joined today by Scott Shuford in Columbia, South Carolina. So welcome, brother.
Hey man, good to be together.
So I'm super excited to see your face. But before we jump into this, the Fatherhood on the Field podcast is brought to you by Timberview Cabins. Timberview Cabins builds and sells vacation rental properties in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and the surrounding areas. If you're considering purchasing real estate for investment purposes, give these guys a call. For more information, check out timberviewcabins.com. So Scott, man, it's great to see your face. So Scott and I go back years. Scott actually officiated my wedding and discipled me for a period of time and loved them. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself real quick, Scott. Tell us a little bit about you, your family, and what you do.
Yeah, so I think starting from today and maybe working backwards, I am serving currently as the campus pastor of Radius Church, Southside in downtown Columbia. We've been here about a year and a half, helping to plant the church. My wife, Jess, is the athlete of the family. She played softball in college and volleyball and basketball in high school and softball. She's just a stud athlete. And we have four, I like to say little boys, but they're not little anymore.
Not little anymore.
It's crazy. We have four sons. Our oldest is 11. He's in sixth grade. He's 5'5", 140 pounds. I mean, he's just a little athlete in the making. And then we've got twins that are 9 years old, and they're just bright and awesome. And then we've got a little 5-year-old kindergartner, the exclamation point of all of it. So we've been here just trying to follow the Lord's direction, and I'm passionate about sport and Jesus. So thankful to be here, man.
It's awesome. Well, man, and thinking back, it's crazy how fast time has gone because Sam was just born when we were sitting around your dining room table and talking about marriage.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, a little baby in the rocker, right? And now he's
nuts.
He's a big boy.
Well, I'm excited to have you on here because of so many men that I have in my life. I think you model fatherhood and marriage in an intentional way that's different. And having watched you, at least for myself, watched you kind of go in front of me in marriage and fatherhood and other things, you've just really set an incredible example in those worlds. And so I'm excited to have you on here and talk a little bit about that. The one thing you didn't mention is that you also were an athlete, college football player.
You say was an athlete. That's probably correct term. I'm a little bit of just a runner and noontime basketball guy now. But yeah, I played football at Furman up in Greenville, South Carolina, and a couple different sports in high school. And sport from a very early age was a huge part of my story, my journey, in my life.
Yeah. So for you, as you flesh that out a little bit, how did athletics play a role kind of in your development, both, physically as well as spiritually?
Yeah, man, I think development is, it's a positive and a negative term, right? Like there's sometimes you're in the weight room and you're under the squat bar and it's hard and it's taxing, but it's making you better. And then there's sometimes where you're winning and you're top of the mountain and you're learning from that. So I feel like my story is a bit of all of that. Growing up, I remember kind of playing basketball and baseball and soccer, but then really found football. I was always a larger kid, so I wasn't the most fleet of foot. Other sports were fun, but they didn't really fit kind of my build. And then I realized I could be a pretty good offensive lineman. Started playing football at the age of 8. And I just have memories kind of from that stage of life that were very, very, very kind of positive and affirming, that there was this, I do have value. I do have something to add to the team. I do have a skill set that can contribute. I can lead, when you start to kind of grow up a little bit in those little peewee leagues, you're pouring back into younger guys. So sport, like in that sense, I feel like it really kind of gave me some self-esteem and some motivation and some purpose. But the kind of the cutting edge of that would be kind of some more of my opportunities that I had in high school. Played for a program. We won a ton of football games. And on one hand, I'm so thankful for the opportunity. I mean, it opened up doors to go to college, play sports. But looking back, with the majority of my interactions with the coaches in that setting, they just didn't have a keen eye on developing us as men. And I think I still carry a lot of wounds. We have our personal stories. We have our life kind of growing up, our family life. But then, it seemed like some of that was compounded a little bit with this performance identity. That I'm only as good as my last play. And I've kind of had to dig out of that a little bit. So it was a shaping experience for sure. For sure.
So there's so many different directions I could possibly take this, but as we're thinking about this, one of the kind of foundational pieces for the inception of Fatherhood on the Field was just seeing how as dads and as coaches, right, the impact we have on our kids through athletics. So often, like you said, in a negative way, right? Where kids can very realistically grow up with their identity or their value, in a sense, being rooted in their performance, right? If I played well, then dad loves me. If I didn't play well, then dad was yelling at me, right? So as you kind of grew up around that, not your dad per se, and maybe your dad was the same way, but at least with coaches, how has that shaped your view of fatherhood away from athletics? In terms of how you deal with your boys now and that performance mentality that we can so easily fall into as men?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they say, I remember reading in a book sometime that like the worst part of a child's athletic experience is the car ride home. Where they're sitting in the car and they got nowhere to go, and dad is saying, "Man, what happened on that one play? Why didn't you do this? Why?" And I just think, like I said, being someone who's kind of had to live through and live out of that mentality of your value is tied with your performance. It's always top of mind as I'm parenting. I'm not perfect by any means. It is easy to slip into okay, I'm seeing your actions and I'm just attacking is the wrong word, but I'm moving towards just your actions and kind of the fruit of what you're doing, but I'm not really getting to the heart. So as a dad, that's been one of the things really tried to major in is go, okay, I see your bad attitude, but let's pull to the side and I really want to meet you in this, and I want to move towards your heart. As opposed to just, all right, go run a mile, right? You fumble the football, you're an idiot. But really going, hey, what's happening beneath the surface? Because in high school, there was a ton happening beneath the surface in my life. My mom was battling what ended up being terminal cancer. I was in a stupid, just broken dating relationship where I was to blame for all of it. I mean, it's just being an idiot, and then all around me, my world is struggling, but all that coaches were seeing was the tip of the iceberg. So really as a parent, trying to take that tip of the iceberg and then say, what's happening underneath, and take the time to really, it's hard with 4 children that are very active, and there's corrective opportunities all the time, but take it and move towards the heart of the matter. So that's a broad brush, but that to me is something I'm just trying to keep, like I said, front of mind all the time.
No, and that's huge. I think for so many dads, we constantly are battling the parental temptation to be reactionary, right? Or even to just solely address the behavior and feel like we have succeeded as parents when the behavior has been modified.
Right.
And at times, we've never deeply addressed the needs of the heart. And even being open to our kids engaging in that and being able to communicate deep, hard things. Now, from an athletic standpoint, am I right? Is Sam started playing football, correct?
He did, yeah. So he's done a handful of things, but he started playing football two years ago. So this is actually his third. He just finished his 3rd season.
So I'm interested in this, and this was not one of the questions I pre-prepared and sent to you. But
I'll do my best.
We'll figure it out. But for me, one of the things I've been seeing with my own kids is I've spent a long time around the game of baseball, and I can almost see a desire in them to feel like they're gaining my approval through the game, or that I care more because of what they do in and around baseball. Which is completely false, right? Me and you would know that. But at the same point, what have you done intentionally with Sam to kind of combat that idea that dad loves football, dad was in football, dad had a career in football? is dad going to approve of me because of this? And I don't know if you faced that or not.
Yeah, really difficult. With two parents that were both Division I college athletes, and with a mom who was a freak athlete. I was just a lineman. I pushed people around. Yeah, just a little bit of size added to the equation. But Jess, my wife Jess, and I have talked about that a bunch. Just how to not put any undue pressure on them to even play sports. And I think from an early age, that has always been in the equation. We've always had musical instruments around the house. Two of our boys were involved in a play last year. They take piano lessons and guitar lessons, and we've really tried to give them just a rich, offering of opportunities. But then also kind of going, hey, we think you got some skill here, and to be honest, sports is just transformative. From just a life perspective. So we've always tried to keep them in something that's active and it's team related when it comes to sports. But I've said, and it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I'm not a former baseball guy, but I imagine you watching your boys play, you're going, man, you give me 10 minutes, I could fix that swing or I could fix that thrower. And then your wife's squeezing your knee going, just let it go. He's got a coach. So I'll be honest, like there are difficult times where it's easy to jump kind of into coach mode in my mind. Sure. But in the conversations that I've had, specifically with Sam playing football, tried to make it really clear, hey, buddy, like, you think dad loves you more when you do better? No. Well, you think I love you less when you don't do well? No. So like just trying to keep that conversation out
Sure.
there, and then always go, I don't care if you play football. It doesn't matter to me one bit. Like, I love you for who you are. I hope you're having fun doing it. I think you're doing a really good job. But yeah, just trying to keep that thing going, because like I said, I come from a place where so much of my value is tied up in my performance. And I kind of have like a hyper alert to that when I sense I'm putting that on him.
Yeah. Or even when it's not you putting it on him, maybe he's putting it on himself. And I see that, even with my boys at the moment. Even the other day, we were, coaching Little League Baseball, and Isaiah, my oldest, was pitching, and he walked the first three guys of the inning. So, I made my little mound visit, went out and talked to him, and he was borderline falling apart on himself, right? Like, I'm terrible. This is awful. I'm letting my team down, yada, yada, yada. We had a good conversation about, how to deal with failure and how to respond to failure and how to have the mental fortitude to approach difficult situations and push through them, that even though they're uncomfortable, this is where we are. So there's so many, and I've said this over and over again here on the podcast, at least, is that baseball was never meant for baseball's sake. It was always meant for something else. So as you're walking with your kiddos inside of that, what are some of the life lessons that you want to see them learn through youth athletics, at least at this point?
Man, there's probably a laundry list. I'll start kind of where, it's okay. I'll kind of start where you were. We were talking about this a little bit before. I've done a ton of thinking on this. I forgot to mention earlier, but worked 10 years with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and constantly philosophizing about how would Jesus coach? How would Jesus compete? What does it look like to compete with God's kingdom in mind, with the eternal perspective, not just with the temporal? So since that has been the case, I've done a lot of background, thinking about that. And so we've tried to translate some of those values to our boys in sport. So one would be, how do you define winning? Well, it's the scoreboard, Dad. Of course. I mean, duh. Look at SportsCenter. And we've tried to not, swing all the way in the pendulum where, oh, don't worry about the scoreboard,
Sure.
Just put on your flip flops and, blow bubbles and chase butterflies in the outfield. But really going, okay, winning really at the end of the day, I would argue, and you can argue back, but at the end of the day, I would argue winning is doing your best, maxing out the ability you've been given and doing that with a great attitude. So just this past Saturday, we had a soccer kind of World Cup final for our boys. They've been in a little league through their school, and our twins were playing in it, and they got beat pretty handily by this other team that they expected to just kind of roll on. And after the game, they're both in tears. God, one of them was the goalie. I could have done better. I lost the game for the team. The other one was, kind of the striker guy. And he's like, if only I'd hit the ball. And they can finish my sentence, but I'll go, hey, boys, did you do your best with a great attitude? And they're like, no, I didn't do my best. Well, listen, did you do your best with a great attitude? And they're like, yeah, I think so. So, well, what does that make you? And they're like, a winner. So just trying to kind of to recast that, because I believe for life that's a transformative virtue and understanding that you can catch through sport. That it's not just about landing the biggest contract, but it's about being the best Luke you can be, being the best Scott you can be, and then doing that with a Christ-like attitude. And then from there, beyond that, like sport, I mean, there is nothing like getting knocked down and having to get back up. You talked about baseball earlier, you're one of the greatest kind of tools. I be a little biased, football, you get hit in the mouth, and
it's true. I'll give it to you.
You got to get up next play and go, all right, that same guy is still lined up across from me, and what am I going to do? Right. So just watching our boys do that, like learning how to fail is so valuable. And then, to be honest, like the other space where I grew up that I really treasured was just the diversity of sport, especially playing in football. I mean, you're lined up next to and across from guys that don't look like you. They don't come from where you come from, but you're on the same team, and you have to pull together if you're going to accomplish anything. And I just want them to learn that. Like I said, you can go on and on and on and on, but like those ideas of fighting for something, of getting back up, and of doing it alongside of brothers, like, it's invaluable.
Yeah, 100%. Man, and I feel like we could go in so many different directions, because I feel like you have so much wisdom in this area. But for the sake of time on this episode, talk to us a little bit about the book that you wrote in this world of sport and approaching that.
Yeah, thanks, man. So I got done with football. It was a strange feeling to kind of take the pads off for the last time and really realized that my competitive athletic career was over. You see all these folks that write these memoirs later years of their life, and I was like, man, I can't write my life memoir, but I can write a sports memoir, because I'm done. I may play slow pitch softball or pick up basketball, but I'm not gonna be back on a collegiate field. So was sitting in that space and really felt, as I was praying kind of through next seasons of life, felt like the Lord had given me just a little bit of a nugget. I mentioned it earlier, but Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4, talks about not fixing our eyes on what is seen, but fixing our eyes on what is unseen, because what's seen is temporary, but what's unseen is eternal. And kind of from that nugget and kernel, really just took my computer and started kind of pecking away at the keys. It took 10 years to write the book. It's called The Eternal Competitor. Finding life beyond the scoreboard. And it's really first third is kind of like sports memoir, like looking back, what are things that I learned from my story, all the way from Pee Wee football up to, playing in the national, playoffs in college, and being captain of the team senior year, and off-season conditioning, all that stuff, right? Just going just kind of putting a lens and reflecting on that. And then it's 1/3 kind of kingdom principles on competition. So it's, what is our true motivation? What does it really mean to win? Who's our true audience? What is a worthy goal to really spend our lives after? And then the last third is really like an athletic, evangelistic parable, for lack of a better word. It's a story of a young man. And I felt in the FCA world that there was a lot of devotional literature, a lot of kind of Bible studies for coaches or Bible studies for athletes, but there wasn't a lot of kind of bottom shelf. If you speak sport and you're interested in Jesus, like, what is there a resource that could kind of meet you there and maybe give you some tools? So it has discussion questions at the end of each chapter. Coaches have worked through it with their fellow coaches. Teams have done it. Dads and sons have given it to. Like, it's definitely a labor of love, a labor of obedience, but thankful just kind of for the fruit from just this simple idea that, man, we can get so hung up on what we see that we can miss what's really real, especially in the arena of sport.
It's awesome. No, and I will put the link to that in the show notes for those of you who are interested. So Scott, as we round out our time, if you were to leave, the dads who are listening to this with one thing, doesn't have to be anything around sport, but specifically around fatherhood, what would you want dads to hear from you?
Man, first of all, will be this, just from the background where I come from. I know you may have a lot of different folks listening to this, but Jesus Christ changed my life in college, and it really gave me a purpose and a peace and an identity and a power that I've been looking for my whole life. And walking in relationship with Him as my Heavenly Father, it gives me the ability to love my children and to love my wife. And it gives me a model to look at. So I'd say one is, man, you got to figure out what model you're following. Jesus is a great model of someone who cares for the heart of the people He's been entrusted with. And I'd say, man, that would be one, is just figure out where you are with Him and what it could look like to press into a relationship with Him. And then two, as a dad, just like, don't miss it. My wife and I were talking the other day, like this season where we have little people in our home is just so fleeting. I mean, like every year it is just click, 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 and it's going to be gone. So just don't miss it. Don't miss those spaces to have that heart level conversation, to lay next to your boy or your daughter in the bed with the lights off while you're putting her to sleep, and just to hear her heart. Don't miss the opportunities to have those real conversations in the car on the way home from the game. What was going on in your heart when that happened? How'd that make you feel? What can you learn from this? And then, like football, you get hit in the mouth, get up, keep going, because I think there's more grace in it than we want to give ourselves credit for. Especially with that first kid, you're kind of freaking out and you're clamping down on everything, and then you realize like this is a marathon. So just to keep walking it out. But
by kid number 4, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Kid number 4 was eating dog food in the backyard yesterday, and we're like, immune system.
It'll be all right. Yeah, it'll be all right. So, no, man, I think that's what I'd love to pass on.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, hey, brother, I appreciate you being here with us, and for those of you listening, I appreciate you listening, and hope that this is a blessing and an encouragement to you as you engage in fatherhood. So if it has been, like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, so we can encourage dads to pick up the mantle and go be dad. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you, brother.
You got it, man. Thanks, Luke.